Yeah, so my name is Kim. I just recently graduated from uni in Brisbane, just at the end of last year, so 2019. And yeah, I was just looking for opportunities that were close to home where I could still be engaging in art, because it was just kind of like my first step after leaving university, which was quite daunting. So yeah, I just applied for this at the end of last year. Wrote out my proposal. I was very nervous, of course, because it was the first thing I've done. But yeah, applied for that and then got the response back from Rebecca that I got accepted, and yeah, started in June. Yeah.
And just to let listeners know, it's part of the annual The Walls Art Space residency program.
Yes.
Which is a 3 month?
3 months, yeah, local air it's called, and yeah, for 3 months, so from June to August, and then early September I'll have an exhibition just to conclude the residency.
Wonderful. Yeah. So just by having a look at what's going on in the studio space, which is, I think, luckily, I guess, for you, the option to be sitting in the main gallery space at the walls due to current circumstances.
Yeah.
And I'm just having a look around and having a look at a lot of images that detail representation or ideas of self-representation. A lot of portraiture that's being amplified, blown up, cut up, reconfigured. Surrounding us on the walls are notes and phrases, dictations of sometimes philosophical content, sometimes absurdist content. It's a very curious mix, almost like a mishmash of ideas about what is meaningful to, I assume, yourself. Would you like to unpack some of those things that are taking place, and probably not only in this residency program, but maybe it has informed your work in the last 3 years?
Yeah. Coming into this, I guess in my head, my main focus or the main key ideas that I was looking into is the concept of identity and how it can be presented or performed online. So growing up, being born in the late 90s, I've kind of grown through maybe the most recent technological advances, we'd say. So I've kind of had all this, the kind of changes going through my life. So I guess now at this point, I'm just really curious into people. I think that's where it really starts, into people, into our lives, and social media is definitely a big part of my life. So that's kind of what has driven me to be exploring these sort of ideas. But more specifically, where I seem to be at the moment is, there's a focus on portraiture and representations of the human body. It's more often than not myself in the actual artworks. And what I've been doing recently has become more of an investigation into materials. So I've been just printing images onto paper, onto photo paper, and then sort of examining them from there. I'm used to doing a lot of digital work before this, or a lot of photography or video that exists online. So this sort of process of bringing it outside of there is, I guess, maybe a technique I feel like I'm using to kind of understand it more or get more of an idea about what photography is like online. So often it's maybe repeating a process or a trend maybe that I've seen online in the physical. And I think for me that really literal version of it in the flesh, it helps me sort of gather my thoughts about it and how it exists online. So yeah, currently I've been printing off images and sort of pixelating them actually digitally beforehand, and then breaking them up once I bring them out into the real world. But yeah.
And that's what you mean by a trend that you see in the digital landscape, this ability for an image to be pixelated, to be broken up into squares, sometimes rectangles, but essentially data of information.
Yeah.
And then bringing that into the real world through materiality photography per se at the moment.
Yes. Yeah. One thing that's kind of interesting to me is the idea of like a photograph and how it can represent a person, or an accurate representation, or what an accurate representation might be. And through social media, when we have these accounts, or these, as Instagram actually calls it, an authentic presence of someone. I'm looking at it's not just the photos we post, but it's the types of photos, the filters, the text that surrounds it, the interactions, the tagging, comments, stories and posts, all these different things that might become to accurately represent something, or in this case a person. And for me, I believe in that we have spirits, so we've got a separate thing that perhaps can't be captured online. And I think a lot of these kind of cutting up and reshaping is these sort of attempts to recreate something, or recreate something real, maybe with physical things, if that makes sense. They're all the ideas are all kind of bumping into each other in my head, but it's like lots of different things at once, and actually I'm not too sure if it fully they all come together in each individual artwork, but yeah.
It's quite interesting actually. It reminds me of a couple of different things. One is that notion of the aura that we are taught about in art school, and if that's a real thing, and if it is, where is it in the work? You know, the hand of the artist or the author, and an authentic voice, painters in particular, or the painter, being able to transfer their spirit to the picture plane, and they radiate off the picture. That's kind of the general sense of where aura lies, and then it's changed radically in terms of so Walter Benjamin's The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, which was essentially about cinema and the reproducibility of cinema, that sort of films could be distributed around the world. And obviously we're in a hyperbolic state of that in the digital sphere. So what does that mean for the transference of that thing that's of human essence that was prescribed by the maker of the work, that's coming out into gallery spaces. And I just sort of branch off from that because I noticed you're reading Roland Barthes' camera. Lucida, is it?
Lucida. Yeah.
I haven't read it for about 20 years, but it was really a good groundbreaking book for me in my art school training. And if I remember correctly, there's a kind of key point on the small little death of the subject once they had their photograph taken. So there's this notion that when you take an image of something, and it probably works in the digital realm just as much, even though it looks like everyone's living fulfilled, meaningful, flamboyant, fantastic lives that make you sort of feel a little bit shit. Your life clearly isn't as marvellous as the representation of these other lives. But is that, because it just doesn't seem right, and you hear it in theory all the time. So there's a real interesting, like, where is the death going on there? Where is the sense of the devaluation of your personal being, your spirit, when we're confronted by images? And I think this is actually really interesting from where you're coming from with the notion of particularly self-portraiture, self-portraiture. Who is it that I am when I take a photograph of myself? Who is it that I am when I show a photograph of myself? Particularly for your generation, I would say that is so used to turning the camera around on themselves. Whereas my generation, I think we still have a bit of an aversion to it. We were looking out at the world in photography. So it's like composing landscapes. It's like you are external, or not the world outside you is external to you. But you knew implicitly you were a part of that. So we were trying to make sense of the external world. I think in the last 20 years or so, that philosophy has shifted to go, no, I'm implicitly part of that external world. So now I look back at myself.
At me.
You look at like people. I've just seen an example of like some major monument around the world, and all the postcards previously or tourist shots were of that. So let's just say the Eiffel Tower, for example, the Eiffel Tower, and now it's a self in front of the Eiffel Tower. What a radical change.
It is, and I have this poem up on the wall. It's actually a short story called No More Photos, and it's by Margaret Atwood. But she just talks about how it's quite short, but it's no more images. I don't want any more images of me. I already have one. I have enough. And that's just kind of been this driving force for me, because growing up with it, it's just instilled in you these ideas. I'm so used to just taking photos of myself for no apparent reason. There's no special moment anymore, which is the film photos maybe that I have from when I was a child are of the big events. It's of the birthday parties, it's of Christmas, it's of weddings, and then today it's just any random sort of moment. And so a lot of actually the photographs I use or the ones I'm using right now are all selfies, and they're all just really just from everyday life. There's nothing really special about any of the times. It's just I don't know, so easy to do, or there's no thought process behind it anymore. Whereas even maybe when I was younger, to take a photo was a bigger deal than it is now. Almost. This is just, and a lot of these, there would have been 20 photos that look really similar, and this is just one of the specific ones that I took in that 5-minute time slot. So yeah, it's really interesting how it's changed, I guess, or how I'm thinking now. People being born in the last 10 years will know even less of that. So I've just got maybe the first 5 years of my life are still on film photos or old camcorders, home equipment, whereas the kids growing up from when the iPhone was just here, it's just mind-blowing to me. It'll be even different again. They will know nothing of that time. But it's interesting.
I was covered off cuff in some ways, but I have this theory that I've started to develop about latency, because both Rebecca Ross, director of Walls Up Space, and I were of a similar generation. We often lament about the analogue world, and it's often debates in a lot of artistic circles, not just photography, but electronic music. There's a debate on whether you just use software or you use actually synthesizers and stuff like that. So the analog digital kind of discourse is kind of interesting. But growing up in solely analog parlance, there's a sense of if you push a button, something happens, like an on-off button, a physical click to it, like a TV, and you have to get up out of your couch and go turn the TV on. But so that's kind of what I mean by latency. It's still got there's a slight delay, but something generally happens, and you learn to rely on that speed or lack of speed. As opposed to in the digital world, when you press a virtual button, depending on your internet speed or wherever you are, nothing might happen. Or it could happen 2 seconds later or 4 seconds later or a microsecond later. So this idea of the reliability of my world previously that I could sort of measure on a daily level has shifted dramatically. And it's this thing of I cannot predict cause and effect in the digital, in the virtual realm. And I think about, like I was saying before, a lot of younger people, so maybe born in the last 10 to 15 years, who have will never need to press an analog button. It's just dealing with that kind of digital sphere, whether there is an intuition to it, so that I can press a button on a screen and ensure that, okay, there's so much latency in this operating system at the moment, it'll take 3 seconds for the event to take place. And is that a kind of intuitive thing, which is kind of interesting, like I haven't got it, but I imagine it might take place, which just means we as a civilization might be getting closer to the virtual, to becoming sort of more cyborg-like, because we're instead of intuiting data and the speed of data and how you might move through latency and anticipate and then be able to make a better judgment on if something's going to take 3 seconds to occur, then I can go do something else. We're getting super, super fast in terms of interpretation of information at that level. But yeah, that's just something curious. And it's interesting to hear that you had that experience of analog photography.
For only but by the time I was old enough to use a camera, it wasn't necessary anymore. So it's quite interesting as well. Today, like there's very clear like drawback to it for lots of people. I see film photos all over social media now, and it's quite interesting. I don't really know why, but we're still drawn to it. And that's maybe the thing I'm interested in as well. Not so much that now it's becoming a trend, but because for its aesthetic qualities or perhaps what it might represent. But people still, or young people want to use it, and I don't know if that's like a turning away from technology, or like an apprehension towards technology, maybe pushing us the other way. It's there's lots to think about, I guess.
There's a lot of talk and discussion about the addictive nature of social media and technology in that regard, and maybe it's a way to start to wean off. You've got to go back to photography. Photography, for example, like it was so great to only have 24 shots or 36 shots and not know what they are going to be. And I know that was kind of a hipster trend like a few years ago to do that, and like not knowing information, like not choosing to do a Google search on like a word you don't know. Let's just live in the unknown.
I couldn't have been in that trend. I wouldn't have lasted very long.
Nice. Let's go back to the residency for a bit. So maybe just tell listeners how you've approached it. So it's a 3-month program. There's been a few things taking place within that period of time. You run an artist-run initiative that I think people would be really interested in hearing about as well. So if you just want to sort of indulge us, tell us how you've approached that period of time.
So when I first came in, because I had such a big space, at first it was, and I've never had my own studio before, it was, I'm coming from lots of digital work. I thought, gosh, I have to put something on the walls. That was my first thing. I thought I can't just be sitting in this, it is called the walls, but like this just the white cube. It's like I can't just sit here and stare into the blankness of these walls. So I think that was actually, that could have been quite a push for me towards doing more physical work. But for the first, we've just past 2 months now, it has been a lot of experimenting, a lot of researching and making works in response to what I've been reading, but also just out of my own intuition, which I also haven't really done before. Just kind of sitting in the space and feeling the materials, or having an idea and going with it. Have been in the past used to planning out an artwork or thinking about what it can mean so much that I'd have thought about it and never made anything, which is just a personal habit of mine, which I've learned that's just what I do. So having this physical space and just kind of coming in and just having the freedom to try new things. I don't know if that's also because it's just being me here, so I've kind of haven't had any sort of standards to live up to, maybe, and then also the freedom that I've been given to just kind of go for it from you and Rebecca, just to try whatever I want and just be in the space, has really just pushed me to do all sorts of different things that I don't know if I would have done outside of this. But with the last month or so, we have been planning an exhibition that we just had over the weekend here, Organism, and yes, that's with Next Door, which is the ARI that I'm a part of. That was quite interesting as well, packing up all my stuff, heading upstairs, and then totally transforming the space for 3 days, and then packing it all back up again, and then settling back in. That was also a really awesome opportunity just to be given. Unfortunately, due to the negative circumstances of COVID, the space had to be free, so I was able to plan something with the team and bring that in, and that was an awesome opportunity to be able to give an early career artist like me, who's also still studying, to be in the same position as them, and then also be able to give them a chance to be in a space. Was a really awesome opportunity. And we all really enjoyed ourselves over that weekend, meeting new people and viewing the work. And I think any artist can get so much from viewing their work in a space and spending the time to install it well and really think about the curation of the exhibition. So it was a really awesome weekend. It's been, I think I've got just under a month to go now until the exhibition, so I think from now on it'll be more starting to decide on what artworks I think have more potential maybe to expand upon and start kind of making decisions, because at the moment I've got all sorts going on, pieces of paper everywhere and ideas everywhere, so maybe starting to tailor those in perhaps will be what's happening in the next few weeks. So
I really like that workflow. I teach it a fair bit and I try to do it myself within any given time frame, like half of that project, just experimenting, seeing what you don't know anything about yet through making work or knowledge, reading, etc. There's at some point where everything needs to get resolved. In one way or another. Yes. Or a third of the project. And then that sense of is it any good?
Yes, that's it. It's a real privilege to just be able to go for it and make heaps. But then at one point you go, okay, what's just a fun thing to have tried, or something that is actually really interesting or has lots to discuss about it or looks interesting, I guess. So
in terms of your success in getting the Walls residency, as well as other opportunities that have happened, is there any tips you can offer younger artists or emerging artists about how to approach applying for the Walls or this residency thing, and some sort of professional tips for people that are starting out?
As a procrastinator, I would say applying in advance, being ready for that application. So be on the lookout for applications and then apply at least maybe 3 days beforehand, because it can be a long process, and you want to be able to, put yourself in the best position, and that always takes me a bit of time. So not leaving it to the last minute when you've got to be compiling images and writing. You really want to put your best foot forward. So I would definitely suggest being organised and getting onto that early. And also just, I guess, taking up any sort of opportunities to maybe learn more about applications. I know you did an application writing, like a help course. What's the word for it? Seminar's the word. And I'd just done an application the weekend before, and I'm hearing all these things going, oh my gosh, I didn't do any of this. I'm like, wow, I've learned so much. Or, it's those finer details that make it easier for someone else to be looking at your work. And just, learning how to write about your work can be difficult at first. So really taking the time to getting people to read over it, to make sure it's engaging and it makes sense and people can really understand where you're coming from, because I would assume any place that you're applying for, they want to show art that other people are going to care about. And if you care about it, then there's a way to get that across where other people can see, oh, there's value in this, and that person cares about art too. And especially here, I felt like it's great when everyone's in that same boat. Everyone cares about the art. That's what makes it fun and makes it exciting. It's probably my tips.
That's great. That's a really great tip. I like that a lot. And what actually the other side of that might mean is you don't have to be too grandiose about what it is. If you really like and are interested and passionate about what you do, you just communicate that.
Yeah.
You don't have to sort of make things up to sell concept or over.
Or make it sound more advanced maybe than you even know it to be, which is I feel like is an easy thing to slip into, getting the biggest, best word, whereas it's not actually quite necessary. The simpler it is, the easier you're getting those ideas across. So, yeah.
Wonderful. All right, well, that's fantastic. Thanks for your time today. Maybe we'll just wrap up with telling our listeners what might be next for you in the immediate future or long-term future projects and artwork-wise.
Yeah. Well, for me personally, coming up in September will be this exhibition, which I'm really excited about, to be able to, just like I've said, show my work in a space and kind of see all those ideas coming together that are floating around in your head. With Next Door ARI, we've got a few shows lined up for this year and bleeding into 2021, which is really exciting because we're also spread out in Brisbane and the Gold Coast. We kind of have those opportunities to do things in both places. So we've got a few exhibitions planned. Again, planning is very slow because of COVID, but they're there in place and we're excited about it. That's pretty much the future for me. And continuing with art and pursuing it and enjoying it every day. Enjoying the process.
Taking more selfies.
Yes, it works for both Instagram and the art practice. It's a win-win.
Okay, that's cool. Let's call that a wrap.
Cool.
Thanks, Kim.
That's all right. No worries.
Great. Excellent.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.